there, welcome to the Upcycle Design Lab. My name's Cindy and I craft using recycled and repurposed materials. If you're new here, I hope you'll stick around and check out some of my other upcycling tutorials. And if you like what you see, you can check the subscribe button below any of my videos to become a subscriber. Also, if you'd like to be notified when I upload new videos, be sure to check the bell icon as well. So if you saw my last video, you know I finally got the Cricut Maker. I'm very excited. It was a little scary to start with, but I think I'm figuring things out slowly but surely. And I have some of my first projects to share with you today. So one of the projects that I did was the Bleach version using the freezer paper. And I have to say, the freezer paper was really easy and fun to work with. I've done a whole nother video on how to cut your own stencils using packing tape and parchment paper. But the freezer paper was definitely much easier. So if you have your own artwork and you don't mind spending a little time cutting, if you don't have your own cutting machine, you can still certainly do this technique. And the fun thing about it is that you get the positive version and also the negative version that you can use with either paint or bleach. There's a lot of things that you can do with this technique. Now, there are a lot of people out there that have also done this, so I'm not sure how much detail I'm going to go into on how to use the freezer paper or even how to use the Cricut. But I do want to share with you some of my projects that I've come up with, and just encourage you to, if you're thinking about the Cricut and you're not quite sure, you're a little scared, so far, I'm really happy that I took the plunge. It's been a fun new toy to play with, and I'm going to share with you some of my first projects today.
So I'm starting with the freezer paper, and just to be clear, you don't want wax paper. You definitely want to get the freezer paper because it has this plastic coating on one side, and that's what allows you to adhere the paper to whatever it is that you want to stencil. So I'm going to cut a piece of the freezer paper to fit my 12 by 12 light grip mat, and then I will move this over to the Cricut machine. I'm just going to remove my plastic cover. I don't think I need quite 12 by 12, but I don't remember exactly, so I'll probably just cut it pretty close to 12 by 12. And the one thing you want to do is you want to be sure that you have the shiny side of the freezer paper up. So I've got my shiny side here and the other side stuck to the back. Depending on the size of your art, you can certainly cut this a lot smaller. But like I said, I think mine isn't quite 12 inches wide, but it is almost 12 inches long. So now your prints always start up in this corner, so you want to make sure that you line your, whatever it is you're cutting up in that corner. And then just press it down as smoothly as possible. You can see I have a kind of rough cut there, but I think it's going to be just fine. So I'm going to move this over to the Cricut. All right, I apologize. This part is a little bit jumbled up because I was trying to film on my computer so that I could show you my phone. And unfortunately, the sound was so terrible that I'm going to have to do some voiceover here. But basically, the Cricut works with mobile devices, which is great because then you don't have your phone or your laptop or computer cluttering up your desk along with the Cricut. It gets kind of crowded with the mats and everything. So here I'm just going ahead and opening up the app, the Cricut app, to get to Cricut Design Space on my phone. And it jumped right to a project where I was, so I'm just going to back up. And this is the screen that it'll come up with when you first go into Design Space. So you can navigate to whatever design you want to work with. I'm going to be using this artwork that I made that I'm calling the 7 R's, which is all about recycling and reusing and reducing your waste. And you'll notice that the wording is mirrored, and that's because the freezer paper is shiny side up so that we can flip it over and iron the wax side onto the t-shirt or whatever we're working on. So you want to make sure that if you're working with freezer paper that you have your design flipped so that it's in reverse. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but basically I'm just following the prompts to go through and make this design because it's already set up. It does ask me to connect to the Cricut Maker, and that's what I'm doing right here. And you'll notice that the power button turns blue when you're on Bluetooth. So that's kind of just an interesting note. So now I'm going to navigate to the type of paper or whatever it is that I'm cutting. I don't see it in the little initial screen, so I'm going to go to the search all materials, and then I'm just typing in freezer paper. And once that comes up, I can tap on the freezer paper and the machine automatically knows how to cut the freezer paper. It's also telling me that I need a fine point blade, which is already in the machine. And then it's showing the load and unload button. So I'm going to go ahead and slide the mat in under the guides and push the load button. And then once the machine has received the mat, it'll go ahead and flash the Cricut cut button. So you can go ahead and push that. And then your mobile device is telling the Cricut machine what and how to cut. So once the Cricut is finished cutting, you can just follow the prompts on your screen to unload the mat and to finish the project, and then you can just turn off the power and close off the machine. But I did want to show you one of the reasons that as a beginner I like starting with really inexpensive paper like the freezer paper because some of my cuts were a little bit jagged. I think this is still going to work, but the cutter did kind of pull up and tear the paper a little bit. So if you're using some more expensive vinyl, it might be a little more disappointing. So like I said, it's freezer paper is great for beginners. So as I mentioned in the intro, you are going to get a positive and a negative version out of your art if you want to. So I have my 2 t-shirts here. I'm planning to bleach one of them and paint the other one. So I have my artwork still on my mat here. I'm going to be using my weeding tool to pull up the tiny pieces. And then another thing that comes in handy, you're definitely going to want an iron with the freezer paper, but because I have such an intricate design here, I have this small clover mini iron, which is also a very handy little thing to have. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the bleached version, but I am going to use all of the templates so that I can get everything lined up. So I'm going to show you what I mean here in just a second. You want to make sure that you're working on a surface that you can iron on and that your t-shirt's laying nice and flat. You might want to press it before you even start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully remove, I always put my plastic sheet back on there. I'm going to carefully remove this outside portion, which is actually the piece that I'm going to use on my other t-shirt. But I'm going to use it for this shirt as well, just so that I can get everything lined up. All right, I've got my outside edge completely removed, and this particular really curly Q font is kind of problematic, so that's just something to keep in mind if you're doing your own designs. The more curls and winds you have, the trickier it gets. So, like I said, this piece is actually going to be used on my other shirt, but I want to use it to help me line everything up on this shirt. So I'm going to lay this template out and get it all squared off, and then I'm just going to kind of tack it down in a few spots with my little mini iron. So that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to hit the corner here, hit a spot over here. And then this part is a little tedious, but I am just going to start weeding out all of my letters and just gently tacking them down, not completely, because it doesn't, I can tack this down a little bit, but I don't want to totally iron it down. I want to kind of avoid that. So I'm going to pull off my first letter here. I want to make sure I'm turning it over. Sometimes that gets more confusing than others because you want the shiny side down. And then I'm just going to use the edge of my mini iron here so that I can kind of tack this in place. And then I'll move on to the next letter. Now, once I'm done, I can pull this off and iron it all with the bigger iron so that everything's, all the edges are tacked down completely. But putting this template here helps you to be able to line everything up, and it makes it go a lot faster when you're laying all these pieces in place, because it's still pretty time consuming, but it does make sure that you get all of your letters lined up. Do I have that wrong side up? Nope. Like I said, I'm not trying to seal these all the way down. I just want to hold them in place. You want to be sure to leave all the little tiny pieces that you're not using yet on your mat, because it'll help you find everything later on. So you can see if I pull this out of the way, my letters stay where they need to be, and then I can go back with the large iron and just iron down all the edges. And this I can go ahead and tack back down, and I'll be able to use it on my other design as well. So just to show you how delicate pieces you can get some really tiny little intricate cut pieces with the Cricut, which is fun. And like I said, you don't have to worry if you get some of this outer part ironed down, but you do just want to make sure that you're getting all your letters kind of fastened on so that they'll stay in the right place until you can put them down more permanently. So I'm just going to keep working away until I get this all ironed on, and then I'll be back to do the other t-shirt. I've switched to my other shirt now, and I'm again using the little mini iron to tack down any of the loose ends that are kind of sticking up, and then I can put the main part of the transfer down with the big iron. Now the tricky part is all these tiny little pieces that go inside your letters, which is why you definitely want to leave them on the mat, because if you go in order you can usually figure out what pieces go where. But you definitely want to be careful because you also need to make sure that you're flipping the piece over so that you get the wax side down so that it'll stick to the shirt. So I'm ready to do the bleaching and the painting, and I'm going to start with the bleached t-shirt. You don't have to do this, but I like to protect the back side of my shirt, so I'm just using bubble wrap here to put inside the shirt so that my bleach doesn't bleed through onto the back of the shirt. Some people like the way that looks, but I just kind of like to only have the bleach on the front part of the shirt. So I'm just spraying on a little bit of bleach, and you can see it starts to react pretty quickly. You can add a little more if you want to. The only thing you want to be sure is that I work in my kitchen so that I have the sink full of cold water so that when I want the bleaching process to stop, I can just go ahead and take the whole thing and dunk it in the cold water. And that will immediately sort of stop all of the bleaching from continuing to lighten the shirt. And once you've got your shirt soaked, you can see that the wax or the freezer paper template comes off very easily. For the other shirt, I'm going to be painting it, so I also want to protect the back part of the shirt. So I'm just sliding a piece of cardboard in here because I need a flat surface to work on. And then I'm going to tuck the edges out of underneath just to keep them out of the way in case I have any mishaps with the paint. I've decided to use multiple colors here, but you can certainly use anything you want. I think I ended up doing 3 coats on this, which was kind of a lot of paint to cover the whole thing. I would definitely recommend painting darker colors on lighter shirts. It goes much faster. And this did bleed through the shirt quite a bit by the time I put all 3 coats on. But ultimately, I think it turned out pretty well. So as long as you're patient and you work carefully to not mix your colors in the wrong place, you can end up with some sort of fun, different looking designs, even using the same artwork. I was a little worried that the freezer paper might come off the t-shirt because it doesn't adhere super tightly, so I was afraid that I might get paint under the template kind of, but I really didn't have any problem with that. I'm just using a nice soft brush and, trying not to pull up the edges at all, but trying to get right up to the edge, and it really did give me a nice crisp, clean edge to all my letters. So that's it for today's video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you back here soon in the lab.